Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday Slate Week 4 preview. Here talking to you on a Friday afternoon, coming off a divisional rivalry in the NFC North last night, where we saw the Lions go into Lambeau and stomp the Packers. They might be for real right now. The Packers might not also be who we thought they were. Trone, any thoughts from last night's game?
I think that the Lions are for real, and I think the Packers hit the regression that many were talking about that they would. So, yeah, I would continue to. I mean, stock is going to continue to go up on the Lions. I think they seem like they're the real deal. What's the most confusing thing to me from last night though was Jahmyr Gibbs' usage last night. And I know the game script didn't quite speak to a Jahmyr Gibbs game, but I mean, why would you spend the 12th overall pick in the draft this year if you're going to give Gibbs this kind of usage? I mean, we've never seen this before from a round one running back. It's puzzling, but overall, yeah, I think it was a fun game to watch last night, and let's dive into the Sunday slate here.
Yeah, when Dan Campbell said that Gibbs was a positionless player, it just meant that he didn't have a position on the field. So
yeah, I mean, all of those things that got us excited back in August when they said that we're going to use Gibbs in ways that you might not be thinking of, they weren't kidding. I guess that they just meant we're going to keep him on the bench. But no, I think look, Gibbs will be fine. We saw his usage increase each of the first 3 weeks. Last night, I think he just got game scripted out a little bit. So I'm not hitting the full panic button on Jahmyr Gibbs yet, but maybe I'm like a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, you called it though in the beginning of the season that David Montgomery was going to have a lot of the short yard reps, and all three of the touchdowns he had last night were within 10 yards. So
Yeah,
I mean, it makes sense. He's a bigger running back. He'll get that value and that volume, but yeah, I don't think we don't have to lose hope for Gibbs yet this year.
no, and look, the Lions are doing the same thing with the running back position that they did last year. Montgomery is an upgrade over Jamal Williams, and Gibbs should have been an upgrade over Swift, but they're using him similarly to how they use Swift. Hopefully that doesn't mean that they like him as little as they liked Swift, but we'll see what happens. I think better days are clearly ahead for Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's probably a pretty good buy low guy right now. So somebody who probably over the next few markets until he has that big boom game will give you some value at a depressed price.
Certainly. Well, let's find some more guys on the Sunday slate that we're going to hopefully have a depressed price, but great volume ahead. Trone, let's start with your first buy of the week.
I'm going back to the well on Puka Nacua. Last week, it wasn't as big of a letdown as I think many wrote it up to be. He still had 72 yards on 5 catches. Indianapolis, who they're going up against this week, is currently 26th versus wide receivers through 3 weeks. The Rams, the Rams right now are ranked 9th in yards per attempt and 4th in pass rate. So, I think that they're going to continue to throw the ball. And I think until Cooper Kupp comes back and shows us that he's back to who he normally is, Puka's the guy there. And, I think we saw some Tutu Atwell increase usage last week. But I think that the way Indy plays defense against the pass suits Puka Nacua really well. So I'm fully willing to fire him up again this week.
Love that buy. Yeah, definitely a little bit lacking in usage last week versus the Bengals, but I don't think that should stop anyone from buying him this week. I'm going to stick with wide receivers as well. Going with Devontae Adams, ranked currently 17th in our markets, projected price per share around $8.25. His usage for that Raiders offense is just off the charts. 94% snap rate this year, nearly lapping the second wide receiver in that offense, Jacoby Myers, in receptions, yards, and target share. He's Jimmy G's first look on every play. I thought last week that the Steelers defense would be able to disrupt Jimmy's ability to get the ball to Adams, but it just didn't matter. I mean, I went into that night with a 20-point lead in fantasy and ended up losing by 20 because of Devontae Adams. So I'm done taking the cheese on him. He's a buy every week. He's followed back-to-back weeks with a 79% and 184% profit gain. And especially versus this Chargers defense that is last in the league in fantasy points allowed to secondary or to wide receivers, I'm putting Devontae Adams in the buy category this week and for probably the rest of the season.
There's a reason why every year some of the smartest minds in this game that we play always talk about talent over situation. Devontae Adams is the prime example of that. The Raiders is obviously not what we would cast as a prime situation for fantasy point scoring, but Devontae Adams is just an absolute stud, and it doesn't matter who's throwing him the ball, who's around him. He's going to put up games like you saw last week, and yeah, I think that's a great buy.
Awesome. Well, let's go number 2 for you.
Yeah, so we're going to stick right in line with yours thematically and go with another extremely talented wide receiver in Jamar Chase. So he is ranked 13th in our market right now. Bengals are playing the Titans. Titans are an absolute pass funnel defense, meaning they are extremely hard to run on, but they cannot stop the pass. They are 29th right now versus wide receivers through the first 3 weeks. I have him projected inside the top 10 overall players this week. So to get him at a price that's outside of the top 10, at 13th, I'm very into that. I mean, look, we all know who Jamar Chase is. He's one of the few players in the league with a 30+ point weekly ceiling. So if I'm getting him at a price that doesn't reflect that, I'm not saying I wouldn't project him for 30 points, but he's as close of a chance as anybody to get there. So yeah, I'm very into Chase this week. I mean, we saw him reestablish that connection with Burrow last week. Even with a hobbled Burrow, I'm very into Chase.
Yeah, that offense is only going to get better as the season goes. I mean, it has to, but I think the more healthy Burrow gets, the better connection he'll have with Higgins and Chase. So I like that buy too. I will be shifting to running backs for my next buy. I'm going DeAndre Swift. Projected price per share right now around $2.50. So really not much of a price to pay for him. Since Gainwell's injury, he's become and solidified himself as Philly's number 1 back. I feel like a lot of players could run behind that Eagles offensive line, but he's just so explosive and dynamic, just as much, if not more, than the player he was in Detroit, averaging over 6 yards a carry so far this season, over 300% profit gain in the last 2 weeks in our market. I definitely have him in the buy list for this week. It's a divisional game versus the Commanders, where in these divisional games, as you know, running is going to be key. And I think Swift's going to have his fingerprints all over that. So buy there.
Yeah, I'm into Swift. I mean, another talented guy who's in a great situation. So why shouldn't we keep betting on that until it proves otherwise? I mean, he's better than Gainwell. I think the bet on Kenny Gainwell taking that job was that they just really like him in Philly. But we've seen the difference between the two in the last 2 weeks. I'll jump in. I'm going to stay at the wide receiver position for my next one. 89th ranked in our markets, Tank Dell. So through 3 weeks, he's averaged 17 points per game. And then if you take out in his last 2 games, he's averaging over 22 points per game. Houston is passing at a much higher rate than expected. CJ Stroud right now is, he's 5th in passing yards per game. And, we're seeing Tank Dell, receive about, mid 20% target share already as a rookie. I think he's for real. I think that, you're seeing him almost out alpha, Nico Collins, which didn't, which is a quick turn of events. But I am very into Tank Dell this week. And I think he's got a good matchup. So yeah, I'm going to go right back to Tank Dell for another good performance. I mean, this is something that's been brewing with CJ Stroud and Tank Dell since basically the draft, right? I mean, if you remember back, Stroud went right to the Texans and said, please draft Tank Dell. So this has been something that Stroud has wanted to happen for a while. And if the QB trusts the receiver, there's a good chance that good things are coming.
Certainly, and I love the fact that you just chose Tank Dell this week because I have CJ Stroud as a buy as well. It's been a while since we've seen a rookie QB look this steady right out of the gate. Still no interceptions on the year for CJ Stroud, which is phenomenal considering they pass over 60% of the time in that offense. And he's got two receivers. You alluded to one of them already, Tank Dell, the other Nico Collins. And this Steelers secondary is just not complimenting that pass rush at all. Like they're great against the run. They can get to the quarterback, but for any quarterback that has time to throw, he can find whoever he wants downfield, letting up a lot of big plays to receivers. I think Stroud is going to have a lot of opportunities to throw on Sunday, and so I'm complimenting your Tank Dell pick with a CJ Stroud buy.
Nice. We got the tandem stack going. I like that a lot. Yeah, I mean, look, for a rookie quarterback, like what do you want to see? You want to see them do what they did in college well at the professional level, and CJ Stroud is doing exactly that. He's spreading the ball around. Ball placement's excellent. He's accurate. So yeah, I mean, Stroud looks like the real deal. I mean, I'm rooting for it to keep up all season long. But yeah, so I love that CJ Stroud call. I'm now going to jump to the running back position. I'm going to buy Breece Hall this week at a pre-rank of 93rd in our markets. That basically, look, all the risk is baked in at 93rd. You don't really have to pay for him to break out at that price. And we've seen his share of snaps, rush attempts, route participation, all of that has increased every week. And I think we also saw last week an increase in short down and distance work too. And, which I think early in the season, preseason, we would have expected Dalvin Cook to get the bulk of that. And that's no longer happening because Dalvin Cook looks like dust. So, on top of that, yesterday on Thursday logged his first full practice since his injury 10 months ago. So, I mean, look, I know the offense is bad, but it looks like the training wheels are coming off for Breece Hall. And even on a bad offense, I mean, Breece Hall is good enough where, at the price you have to pay on Jock Market, 93rd overall, there's really only upside from that point on.
Yeah, I love that. I'm in the same mindset with you in terms of some of these penny stocks that I think are going to go off this week. One of mine would be George Kittle. He's a little bit higher than Breece Hall at 85th, but still you're buying him at $1. We saw Kittle's impact, or he was much more impactful last week than he's been all year. 7 catches, 90 yards. Despite his lack of production throughout the beginning of the year, he's still averaging over 10 yards a catch. The Cardinals, who they're playing this week, have a shaky over the middle, allowing a lot of plays to tight ends. We saw Waller and Logan Thomas get open a lot in their matchups. And we've, like you mentioned, I feel like Kittle, like Breece Hall, in this dollar range is a steal in our market. He's a top 3, if not top 5 tight end in the league. He doesn't deserve to be in the dollar range.
No, he does not. No, I mean, look, with Kittle, he kills the Cardinals, number one. And number two, he's the perfect play in a market like this because he's going to get priced down because his weekly projection isn't sky high, but his ceiling is. So I love that call. I'm going to do an on the fly pivot here, because my last buy was Miles Sanders, and I'll tell you why. But as I look at it, Miles Sanders missed practice. So, but I'm going to scroll through here and find one on the fly. And I'm going to pivot from Miles Sanders to Chris Olave. So Chris Olave, for me, I mean, we haven't seen him truly break out yet, right? I mean, he's been great this year by all accounts. If you're looking at our markets, 19 fantasy points, 14 and a half, 18 and a half fantasy points. So he hasn't hurt you at all, but there's a big game brewing. He's got, he's got DGAF, Jameis Winston throwing him the ball now. I mean, look, Olave is getting targeted at the highest rates in the league. He is getting open at some of the highest rates in the league. He's showing all the signs of one of the next great elite receivers in the league, but he's not priced there yet. He's priced at 34th in our markets. So I'm into Chris Olave this week. And look, I think you can throw on that Bucs secondary. We saw it last week with Jalen Hurts, and we saw AJ Brown have a big game. So Yeah, I had originally written down Miles Sanders here, but he got downgraded today to a DNP in practice. So I can't confidently recommend Miles Sanders. So we're going to pivot to Chris Olave.
It's a good pivot. Unfortunately, we'll be shorting his quarterback, but we'll talk about that later. I will be sticking with my last buy of the night. Going to be, where did he go? Kendrick Bourne. Also in the penny stock range in our market. And I mean, we kind of know this better than most because we're Patriots fans and we're from New England and we get it. But there's certain weeks where you can just snipe some penny stocks in this Patriots offense to explode. Their value is still not great. Their offense might be worse than last year's, which sucks to see and say, but it might be true. But the only way that they're going to win on Sunday is if they throw. And when they do throw, Mac Jones is usually targeting Devontae Parker or Kendrick Bourne. So Kendrick Bourne, penny stock, $1 buy this week. I love it. In Mac's last game versus the Cowboys, he had to throw 2 to have a chance to win that game. He averaged over 10 yards of completion in that effort. And we've seen Jones try and target Bourne a couple times through the air this year, not successfully. But I believe in a game when there's no digs for the Cowboys in that secondary, some of those opportunities have to hit at some point. And so I think shooting a shot at Kendrick Bourne for a buy this week is a good idea.
Yeah, as long as they can keep Micah Parsons away from Mac Jones, I think that's a good buy. All right, should we jump into some shorts here?
Yes.
All right, Coleman, you lead it off. Who's your first short this week?
My first short is going to be from that same game, Cowboys Patriots. Dak Prescott, ranked 23rd in our markets this week, $6.84 per share price right now. And I believe it's not really a knock on Dak, although I don't really trust Dak. I just believe more in Bill's ability to confuse Dak this week. The Patriots defense is the third best in the league in fantasy points allowed to the quarterback, only allowing a little over 10 a game. And they will take away your best option. CeeDee Lamb is their best option at receiver. Christian Gonzalez is going to be draping him for most of the day. We saw what he did to Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown and Devontae Adams so far this season. He's a good player, and he's going to take away most receiver matchups pretty well. The Cowboys are probably going to have to utilize Pollard a lot more in this game than Dak. Dak hasn't necessarily shown well in general this year in our markets, mostly negative so far to start the year. And I just believe the Cardinals showed a lot of weaknesses that the Cowboys have last week. And I like Bill and the Patriots defense ability to exploit them this week.
Yeah, Christian Gonzalez looks like the real deal, huh?
Yeah. Rookie of the month this year for defensive players.
Yeah, I mean, and he's had a tough task too. I mean, he's gone up against Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, and then they had the Eagles week 1, and there's no breaks in that passing game either. So, he's gone up. I believe he followed A.J. Brown around the field. So I mean, he's gone through the gauntlet through the first 3 weeks, and he's totally risen to the challenge. So yeah, I think that's an interesting short. I've always been a big Dak guy. I think he's much better than the narrative gives him credit for, but I don't necessarily think that that's going to translate into fantasy points this week. So I think that's a pretty good short. I'm gonna give you another short at the quarterback position. Justin Fields. Somehow he looks worse as a passer this year than he did last year. And the Bears as a whole don't look any better either. I think this is a pretty simple one. We don't even need to make this complicated. I'm just going to keep shorting Justin Fields at top 10 prices in our markets until he proves, basically one of two things to us: that he can throw competently enough to sustain drives, or that the Bears start scheming him a lot more designed runs. And until neither of those, while neither of those things are happening, when he's priced at, I believe, 8th in our market, I'm just going to short him. I think it's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's tough. You're probably doing pretty badly when you're shorting a guy who is playing against probably one of the worst defenses to perform ever in a game this week. But I can't blame you. Yeah, I think you could. I would short both quarterbacks in that situation, honestly.
I mean, we watched Justin Fields last week stare down a wide open receiver in the end zone, completely miss another one who was wide open on the left side of the field, and then just run directly into a pile of linemen. And it's just bad. It's not good. So I'm going to keep shorting Justin Fields, I think, until he burns me, which will inevitably happen. But until he figures that out, I'm gonna profit on an overpriced Justin Fields, I think.
It's fair. Well, I will also be shorting another younger quarterback in the league, Sam Howell, ranked 47th in our market right now. It's not a giant value payout with him being around $3.50 a share right now, but he got abused last week versus the Bills. 4 interceptions, 9 sacks. It's more indicative of how that offensive line played in front of him. We know this Eagles secondary isn't great, but the Commanders' O-line will not be able to stop the Eagles' pass rush at all. I think Howe is going to be rattled all day, and I believe that the Eagles are going to be able to exploit a lot of the same weaknesses that was exploited in Sam Howell by the Bills the week before. So, yeah, I think we're seeing a little bit of regression in Sam Howell. I like him overall in that Commander system, but I think these are going to be some bumpy weeks ahead.
I support that short. Yeah, I mean, it's Sam Howell looks promising, but it's gonna be a rocky ride, I think. So I'm with you on that short. My next one, going to jump over to the wide receiver position. This is going to be probably my most entertaining short to watch, which is Mike Evans. Evans has obviously been off to a great start this year, but Evans versus Lattimore is always appointment television. And I mean, look, Lattimore has been next to impossible to throw on this year. It's always been a really tough matchup for Evans going up against Lattimore. Lattimore literally is in his pocket on every single route that he runs. I mean, look, there's even when you have that alone as a way that this pays off for you in shorting Mike Evans, and then you add in the variable that there's an additional way this pays off, that Evans could even get ejected, which has happened before. I think that there's a lot of ways and a lot of outs to how this short pays off. So I'm going to short Mike Evans this week. Evans will probably land back in my buy category on most other weeks, but it's not going to be this one.
Yeah, I think with the history there, that's a good short. I will be going with a running back for my next short. I'm going to be going Ramondre Stevenson. Not necessarily a knock on Stevenson, but I just don't think he's going to be utilized this week. Patriots are going to need to throw the ball, like I mentioned, in order to probably win this game this week. Also, I mean, Zeke has kind of showed better than Ramondre to start the year. He's averaging 4.5 yards a carry so far this year compared to Ramondre's 2.9. Ramondre hasn't looked the part that he did last year so far this year. That Cowboys defensive line is going to be able to stop the run for sure. And I just don't expect him to be a positive profit this week. He hasn't yet this season. So I just don't expect the trend to continue there.
I think you're right. I think if Ramondre is going to pay off for you, it's because he has a David Montgomery from last night type of game where he falls in the end zone a few times. But yeah, I mean, very surprising turn of events last week where Zeke looked better than him. So yeah, I think that's probably a good short. I'm going to go back to the wide receiver position, again here. Josh Palmer, the waiver wire darling of this week. Obviously Mike Williams, big loss there, losing him for the season. So the opportunity is there for Josh Palmer. But look, when you have to pay this like virtually the same price for Josh Palmer as you do guys like Brandon Ayuk, Debo, Mark Andrews, Marquise Brown, I'm out. I'm just out. I think look, Palmer has had opportunity like this in the past and had just been just incredibly pedestrian. Even in games where Keenan Allen and Mike Williams have been out, looking at, especially last year, he's barely averaging 14 points per game. And I think this goes back to a concept, where wide receiver targets are earned, and players don't get, the wide receivers don't get elevated to the level that a running back does, as they move up the depth chart due to injuries. So, yeah, even, and a guy that I think two people on our buy list, he's ranked above in George Kittle and Tank Dell. I would much rather be in on both of those and the other names I mentioned earlier than buying in on a very pedestrian wide receiver throughout his career. Just with a little better opportunity. I think most of the stuff funnels to Keenan Allen in this one. So I'm going to short Josh Palmer.
Yeah, let's keep buying Keenan Allen, shorting anyone else. I think that's clearly become the number one target for Justin Herbert. I am going to, you mentioned Olave earlier as a buy. I'm going to be shorting Jameis Winston this week as his quarterback. I think it's his first start of the year, first real start. 20th in our market right now just seems way too high for a guy who is still trying to figure things out in the beginning of the year. He came in to that Saints game last week. He just needed to put up 3 points, and he wasn't able to do that. They lost as soon as he got entered the game. I love Jameis. I think he's a firecracker. He's fun to watch. He'll throw the ball a lot, hopefully to Olave for you, but picks come involved there too. There's a lot of discipline issues in terms of his on-field just decision making that he's probably going to still have to work out, and I just don't see it. I see a lot of things biting him this week.
Yeah, I think there's also a world too where, and we've seen this in the past, with pairings like Cousins and Jefferson, where the receiver can pay off, but the quarterback doesn't get there. Right. If Olave gets you, 6 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown, you're thrilled with that. And, whereas that could be most of what Jameis does the entire day. Right. So, I think Winston can not pay off, but Olave can. So I think anytime you're going to short Jameis Winston, it's probably the smarter outcome. But I'll dive into another quarterback I'm shorting this week, Russell Wilson. So far this season, he's really paid off for you in fantasy one out of 3 weeks. In week 2, in that week, the Broncos scored 33 points. And their implied team total this week is under 25 points. And Denver right now is ranked. They're ranked 22nd in pass rate over expectation. And that even includes the absolute debacle last week where they were just getting blown out the whole game and in passing situations. I would much rather pay. If you're looking at where Russell Wilson sits in the market at 25th, I would much rather pay up slightly more for Tua, who's ranked 4 spots higher. So I think it's kind of a similar case to Jameis, where I think that Winston and Wilson are just priced up a little bit too much for me. So I'm gonna be on the short side of Russell Wilson this week.
Yeah, I love that short. You got to sell on that Denver team right now until they prove anything else. My last short of the night is going to be probably our biggest hot take. I'm shorting Patrick Mahomes, 3rd in our market this week. And I'm doing this. This is kind of coming from a place of if the Jets have any pride, they'll show up and show it that tonight on Sunday night against the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Is there a chance to show the world that if they just had a functional quarterback, they could be a playoff contender? The Jets they've been great this year defensively. Against the last 3 QBs they faced, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Mac Jones, minus 45% profit gain, minus 14%, and minus 25%. QBs have not shown well versus this defense. This is the least explosive Chiefs offense we've seen during this stretch of their dynasty. It's a good place to get them. Mahomes has not been profitable in the last 2 weeks of our market. He played the Bears last week. They won by 31. And he still had a -1 profit gain for the week. So if you're facing a better defense like the Jets, I like that as a short. I just believe 3rd in our market for this week. I want the Jets to do well because I want some sort of competency to happen with them. It's more I feel bad at this point. So I think
It's a sympathy short.
it's a sympathy short. Exactly. We should put that in giant graphics all over this right there. Sympathy short. Patrick Mahomes shorting him at third.
We're gonna title this episode of Jock Talk Patrick New York Jets sympathy short.
I love it.
I think it's. I mean, look. I think if there is a game environment where Patrick Mahomes doesn't pay off for you, it's got to be this one, right? I mean, look. It's the percentages, Coleman, probably aren't in your favor. However, the Jets have a good enough defense to slow them down a little bit, and they have, and if my buy on Breece Hall is right, then they will run the ball effectively enough to keep the ball away from Mahomes enough so that he doesn't pay off at top of the market prices. So I think that there's a world where that happens. So I don't think that you're crazy, but it's risky, right? To short Mahomes in any market at any time, to bet against, the alien in Patrick Mahomes. But hey, let's live dangerously, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not going to get nearly as spicy with this. There are, to me, there's three certainties in life: death, taxes, and Alexander Madison being on my short list. So, I mean, look, can you imagine a world where you're buying shares of Alexander Madison at 53rd overall when you could go up a little bit for virtually the same price and buy shares of Devonta Smith at 50th overall or Jalen Waddle at 49th overall in that game environment that should be really high scoring? I mean, look, we talked. I mean, there's plenty of reasons that we've talked. I mean, we talked about Madison a lot on this show, and all the different reasons why I think he's a good short. And he now, and on top of all that, he now should see some increased competition with Akers in the mix, who really isn't any better than Madison. But Madison, I think, has been bad enough to really warrant another running back getting touches in that backfield. So I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing every week and putting Alexander Madison on my short list, and until he proves it to me otherwise, that he can be an efficient, effective running back. Yeah, I'm out. I'm out on Madison.
Yeah, I'm out too. I think it's Cam Akers time. Mid off is happening.
I will. Yeah, I am excited for the mid off. And with the way it's going, I mean, hell yeah, Madison. I mean, Akers could come out of this as the 1A in this committee. So who knows? But I think no matter who comes out on top, it's not going to be a brilliant performance that gets it there.
No, it won't
But
be.
no. So that wraps it up, I think, for the shorts, right?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Let's dive into a little pick'em. Little pick'em action here. I want to highlight a few picks that have been popular so far for the Sunday slate on our, in pick'em for Jock Market. First one, a guy we've talked about already. Coleman, more or less, Jamar Chase, 6.5 receptions.
More. The connection will grow already this season. I think it's going to continue.
I'm going to go more as well. Next one, Russell Wilson, 237 passing yards.
I'm going to go more. I don't like that Bears defense. It's Russ, but still.
I think I have to stay on brand and go under here. But I think it's this is one where I wanted, one wide. Let me try that again. This line is one that I wanted to bring up because I think it's right. I think it's a really good one. I think it's kind of right at where he should finish. So I think for the sake of parity here, I'm gonna go under as well because I'm shorting him. So next one, Tyreek Hill, 6.5 receptions.
I think I want to go over, but I think it's going to be under. I think the Bills are going to play him smart.
I'm going to go under as well. I mean, look, he's been getting absolutely peppered so far this year. I mean, look, I think if he keeps this up, he's on just for. I think he's on almost an unsustainable pace, even for Tyreek Hill. And we haven't had a Jalen Waddle game yet. Could this be the first Jalen Waddle game of the year?
Yeah, we got Waddle back this week. I think.
Yep.
More
Yeah,
opportunities.
he's fully over the concussion, so could be a Waddle game. But yeah, that's one that I think could easily come back to bite us.
Put some respect on River Craycraft's name.
He's out this week, so it's Braxton Berrios.
Cut that.
Yeah, we'll cut that. All right, next one. Another receptions line. Michael Thomas, 4.5.
I'm gonna go under.
This is a good one.
But then again, Jameis has more of a connection with Thomas than Olave.
Sure.
So
I'm going to go over.
Let's go over.
I mean, I don't think Michael Thomas is going to get 10 receptions or anything crazy in this game. But, I mean, is there a world where he gets 5? I think there's plenty of them. So, yeah, I think. But, again, another pretty solid line there. He'll probably end up with 4 or 5 receptions. So, I don't think either way is a smash. All right, last one. Kyle Pitts, 3.5 receptions.
I need this to go over. I need it.
Your bags in fantasy need him to go over?
I can't play Hunter Henry this week and be good without it. I need Kyle Pitts to do something.
I'm gonna go under. I'm so over it with the Falcons and their 1960s offense. Yeah, I mean even at 3.5, I just don't like it. Just don't like the Falcons offense. I'd rather take Bijan Robinson over 3.5 receptions than I would Kyle Pitts at this point.
They if Brady stepped onto that team, they'd win a Super Bowl.
Probably. I mean, their defense is better than defense is improved.
Mm-hmm.
They have just an elite running game, and they've got the weapons on in the passing game to do it. They just like to ignore the top 10 picks that they put in the receiving game and just have them pass block. So, first round wide receiver, first round tight end, who apparently were drafted for their pass block for their run blocking. So here we are. Arthur Smith, I hate it here. Well, that's it for the pick'em. We'll Coleman. Anything else you got? Anything else you want to bring up? Talk about?
No, let's just run back through our buys and shorts on the weekend. I will give you my 5 buys and 5 shorts. First, gonna buy Devontae Adams, DeAndre Swift, George Kittle, Kendrick Bourne, and CJ Stroud. I'm shorting Dak Prescott, Sam Howell, Ramondre Stevenson, Patrick Mahomes, and Jameis Winston.
Nice. I am buying Puka Nacua, Jamar Chase, Tank Dell, Breece Hall, and we've pivoted. We did the on-the-fly pivot from Miles Sanders to Chris Olave. And I am shorting Justin Fields, Mike Evans, Josh Palmer, Mr. Unlimited, Russell Wilson, and the every week short of Alexander Madison.
Russell Wilson's short potential is unlimited.
That's right.
All right, well, that probably concludes it for this week 4 Sunday Slate preview. Good luck to everyone in the markets this week. Enjoy week 4. We got some good games this weekend. Excited for that Bills-Dolphins matchup especially. And yeah, have a good weekend. We'll talk to you guys on Monday.
All right. Awesome. Take care.